Freedom, Part 1. On this farm to Fork, Wyoming. On March 4th, 2015, the Wyoming Food Freedom Act was signed into law. Now, direct-to-consumer sales by farmers and food artisans are free from state license, permit, inspection, and labeling requirements.
The local food movement in America is in its infancy, really, which is odd because it all used to be local. People didn't import stuff. Well, now 98% of the food eaten in Wyoming is hauled in here from somewhere else.
There were a handful of people already going to their farmer and saying, hey, I want this thing. And at the end of the day, by hook or by crook, they did it.
And of course, a lot of this stuff is done under the radar, which is absolutely fine, as perhaps it should be. But it's
ridiculous that it was food on the black market.
So out here on these farms, folks been doing this all along, but how does it get into town?
You've already done step number one. You've actually decriminalized it. So you've basically opened up the gate for this to happen, and it can't happen without that first step, and that's a beautiful thing. So Wyoming leads the nation now in the food freedom ability.
With food regulation oversights removed from the cells between farmer or cottage foods maker and the end consumer, Wyoming's local foods marketplaces will begin to see things like raw milk, butchered chicken, cheeses, and fermented vegetables for sale.
One of the things that this movement has done has been to allow a lot of very small food processing to take place. Sauerkraut and kombucha. It's preserving our food heritage and going back to the principles that will keep us healthy.
If you're willing to put your product out on the market first, just by selling at farmers markets and stuff like that, trying it out or just going around town and selling to your neighbors, before you put it actually on the shelf, this is a great way to find out if your product is actually going to find a market, a stable market. And that, to me, is the greatest part about this bill, is because you no longer have to invest thousands of dollars into getting a licensed kitchen and getting labeled.
Basically, it's going to raise up a class of folk that used to be an integral part of our society that we've kind of forgotten. And now they're going to have a chance to make a comeback and via the free market, they're going to have a chance to, cream's going to rise to the top. The people that use unethical business practices and unhygienic farming practices, how long do you think they're going to last, especially in a community as small as Wyoming?
And some larger family operations might see a value in this as well.
One of the things we learned is that when the economy started to tank 5-6 years ago, that people were losing their jobs and they had to go back to being more self-sufficient and then in turn use what they were producing at home to help supplement their family income. And down in the Star Valley country, what we learned was that as the economy then improved, folks had discovered this new/old lifestyle and had begun to appreciate it. And while the financial need wasn't as strong, they appreciated the lifestyle. And these small family operations have not gone away. In fact, they're flourishing. And it's kind of been a rediscovery of our old American roots.
Something that all these ranches and farms used to do, they used to subsidize their income throughout the year by selling eggs and selling milk and selling products straight from the farm, instead of subsidizing via other ways, like getting a job and working that full time just to bring home enough income to come back to the ranch, or subsidizing via federal subsidies, those types of things. So, that's one of the beauties of it is, maybe we don't have to subsidize in those ways anymore. Maybe we can look at other ways.
Some think making local food production more affordable could lead to better farming practices.
But there's been this conversation that monocropping grains and beans is the only way to feed the world. It's the only way we're going to do it, period, the end. Well, 2/3 of the Earth's land is not appropriate for monocropping at all. And that number is increasing as the topsoil is degraded on the current land that we're monocropping. So that's obviously not a sustainable model for feeding the world, because in 50 years, if all the topsoil's gone, how are we going to feed our people? You turn around and you look at this kind of like Liberty Garden-esque, everyone's got their own little garden, and then you have these food producers that have more specialty items, and people go and barter with them and exchange goods and services with them, in conjunction with this, this kind of holistic land management, planned grazing, appropriate cattle use model via the Savory Institute. And those folks, you start noticing like, oh, maybe the key to feeding the world was the way we were doing it before we invented industrial level agriculture.
Big ag or big food will never be able to do this. A corporation is not a feeling thing. It doesn't have a heart. It doesn't have a conscience.
Thank you, Daisy.
And these people do. These people are doing the right thing. And I'm not saying all corporations are bad. God knows there's some incredible corporations. At least we have a lot of integrity. You got to want to do this. You can't be greedy. You can't be in it for the money. If somebody's into this for the money, are you kidding me? This is hard work. It's wholesome, honest work, but it's hard, and you're not gonna get rich doing this, but you're gonna feel good at night. You're gonna be healthy. You're gonna feel good. You're gonna eat good, and you're gonna help some other people eat good. So we're in the infancy. We're just crawling. The unspoken truth about sustainable agriculture is that it's not sustainable. It's about like Wilbur and Orville Wright with a airplane made out of bicycle parts. That's where we're at. We're not flying B-52s. It's a beautiful thing. The Wilbur Orville Wright airplane is why we're able to sit in a chair and fly 600 miles an hour. But you want to evolve from those airplanes. They were not very comfortable. These farms are not very comfortable. So we're in the infancy. We're just crawling. There are many countries way ahead of us for local, humane, sustainable, organic, grass-fed food.
Consumer desire for traditional artisan foods has been a big part of the push for deregulation.
This will only come from consumers. This is a consumer-driven movement.
They grow beets in Moreland. They grow beets in Moreland because that's how you make money practicing agriculture in Moreland. If there was another way to make money via producing some other crop, you bet your bottom dollar that they're going to invest in that.
I think anybody that really, kind of smirks at it at first and thinks that it'll never happen, go to Star Valley. Go to, Star Valley is a great example. Hatterley Farms. They're a small scale operation. They're not very big acreage wise, but they're doing everything. They're diversified in every single way you can probably be in Star Valley, Wyoming, where your temperature is really cold. But they're doing it, and they're surviving. They're living off that income. That's not small scale. That's a big deal.
The diversity will come from the customers. That's capitalism 101, right? Their demand is what's going to allow for a diversified supply.
So the thing that makes this all work, and the answer to your question, is that it all has to work financially. We have to be willing to pay for quality food. Cheap food leads to poverty. That's what we're learning, is that cheap food will make you sick and stupid.
But some of these previously banned local foods come with both celebration and controversy. I
don't think any word has been so detrimental to a free society as when government says safety, because that's what they use for everything. They use it for the reason to go to war. They use it for the reason why we need to be involved in your refrigerator, why we need to be involved in your bedroom, why we need to be involved in every aspect of your life, and it's for your own safety, is what they tell us. But yet at every turn, every one of these turns, much as like dumping bleach on vegetables to kill off every kind of organism on it, are we really getting safety, or are we really, essentially, at the end of the day, getting nothing more than a society that no longer trusts each other and trusts nothing but a label?
Wyoming is very, libertarian in that way, that if I want to buy raw milk, then I want to be able to do that, and I don't want to have the government tell me that I can't. Yeah. And the consumers' demand for access to healthier local food that they have a greater attachment to and feel that they're providing something better for their families. I think the act definitely, for those reasons, exists due to the consumer.
Market managers worry about consumer safety, and some wonder if the new bill puts them in a liability trap.
And one of the talks that came out, or one of the conversations that came out, was that the lawyers were really thrilled when we passed this Food Freedom Act. Because now the producers are going to be selling things, and they're going to have all kinds of lawsuits with raw milk, poultry. I can legally now sell my chickens and turkeys.
But on-farm poultry processing has been going on for a while in Wyoming through creative farm sales and processing arrangements.
Are we sanitary? I can tell you this, Steph, we've done probably 5,500, maybe 6,000 birds in the last 7 years, at least. And not one person has ever gotten ill eating one of our birds. And this is how we've been doing it.
But many farmers markets remain concerned over the unknown liabilities with selling to the general consumer.
I wish that that didn't exist, because I think all of us, myself and my board, that's what we're passionate about, is being able to be this place where vendors can come and consumers can come, and we can have this really awesome local food experience and provide that access for people. And so it's unfortunate that the who's liable at the end of the day has to even be there, but yeah, it is.
So some markets are looking to restrict some of the products available.
If we had a producer come to us and say, I'm producing this cheese from raw milk and I want to be able to sell it at the market, we have, as a board, said that we would just look very critically at those applications.
Other markets feel the responsibility is between the producer and the consumer.
Stacked chicken enchiladas. So what's that? Stacked. Stacked is
I'm there to facilitate. That's my job. I thoroughly believe that it's up to whoever's producing it to make sure that they're doing it in a safe and acceptable way. I expect my customers to ask questions.
And you made all of it yourself? I did. First we raised the chickens, and then I cooked.
I don't expect them to blindly accept what there is, and I think that they need to inform themselves before they purchase it.
It takes 45 minutes if you thaw it first. It takes about an hour.
For many, the central theme continues to be education and engagement.
I will give you a review on it. Oh, thank you so much.
The best thing about it is it made people more aware that our food is policed or governed. You know, that there are things like licensing, like inspections that most people don't think about happening. You just buy it, it's got a label, you open it, you cook it. But now they think, oh, that inspection label meant something. And now it doesn't have to be there, or now we have to have a different label that says not inspected. What does that mean?
The consumer has to want to learn.
Right.
All of us that are growing, we have a passion, and we're doing this the best we can.
Yeah.
But it still comes down to educating the consumer.
Many feel that local food producers offer an important alternative to the hazards coming out of the industrial food system.
It's not just about keeping a couple farmers, giving them something to do on a Saturday morning, but it's also about economics of the small town. It's about health of citizens eating the good food. It's about the health of the land. It's about more green space as opposed to trailer parks. It's about all these kind of things. So, and once people start picking up on those messages, they start understanding it. And it becomes intuitive that what we do to the soil, we do to our bodies. I mean, the stuff that we do to grow these animals, really, in the end, we're doing to ourselves.
I think that's the best part of this, and I hope that that conversation continues. I like to talk to people about that. I don't know if it's changed. You know, I'm still not going to sell my goat milk necessarily because I'm allowed to now, but I know that it's an option and I can think about it, you know.
And ice cream.
Deregulation of raw milk and raw milk products continues to stir the most controversy.
Well, certainly raw milk is one that I think is very well documented, that consuming raw milk and products that are made from raw milk, so cheeses, soft cheeses like queso, anything that's either raw milk itself or made from raw milk is certainly a higher risk than consuming something that's been pasteurized.
It's clear that raw milk, just like many other foods, can lead to food poisoning, but some believe this war on germs got off on the wrong foot a long time ago.
The interesting thing is how we get what we paint someone as a bad guy. And the raw milk is public enemy number one as far as the USDA goes and the FDA. They're very aware of it. And here's why. Going back to the 1800s, Louis Pasteur, what it's named after, pasteurization is named after him, he pasteurized a liquid in France. What do you think it was? Wine. Wine. Louis Pasteur, they had some contamination problems with the wine, so they were pasteurizing wine. And it didn't occur to them, why would they want to pasteurize milk? French cheeses are all raw, and French people love raw milk. It didn't happen until we came to America with a problem. The East Coast dairies, the Eastern Seaboard, where all the people lived in the 1800s, they weren't here. Very few of them were here. They were out there and they had a lot of dairies. So there was a little thing called the Whiskey Rebellion. And we decided the Brits were taxing us too much in the 1830s and 1840s for the whiskey. So we decided, heck, we got a lot of corn here. Let's make whiskey here. And here's where I'm getting to the point. What do we do with all the swill that comes from the whiskey, which is the spent corn? Let's give it to cattle. Well, unfortunately, it's a very devitalized food substance. So the cattle started getting less, their immune strength went down. And what happened, the people milking the cows were frequently in the large city populations. There's a ring of farms around Philadelphia and Boston and New York and all the big cities. Those were brand new immigrants. First job you get is out there milking a cow. And a lot of those people in the 1800s had two horrible diseases. They had TB, which was the number one killer in the 1800s, clear up until about the 1930s. And some of them had undulant fever, which is brucellosis. And so they found that if you drank certain milk, you got TB, this deadly disease. So we thought, those dang cows are giving us TB. It was actually the dirty hands of the milkers that was going right. Now we have milking machines. Even this farm, right where we're sitting, will have a milking machine on a clean udder, and it's going to go into a clean jug. They didn't have that then. So they said, how are we going to prevent people from getting TB from drinking milk? I know, let's call that French guy and start cooking our milk. So that's how it all started. It started on the wrong foot, and then by a few years later, people were able to sell dirtier and dirtier milk because we're going to cook it anyway. Then you can take a food like raw milk, which is the most natural food in the world. It's the only food that you can live on. It's called a golden food item. You can't live on carrots, you can't live on chicken, you can't live on eggs and not eat anything else. But if you drink raw milk, you can live to be 100, whatever your lifespan will be, you'd be perfect, you know, as your optimal health, just drinking raw milk. If you cook it, it won't work because the enzymes aren't there, the vitamins are depleted, it's devitalized. It's a devitalized food and you've ruined it for that. The kind of raw milk that we recommend, the chance of getting food poisoning is about 0.0004.
So one of the very important points about what we call a campaign for real milk is it's not just about raw milk. Real milk is three things. It's milk that's raw, has not been processed, milk that comes from grass-fed cows, not cows in the industrial system, and milk that has all the fat in it, that's whole milk. That's what we call real milk. And it's all three of these things that make real milk such a healthy food.
Other countries are examining the argument for raw milk.
We have some new data out of Canada, some new studies that looked at the safety of raw milk. They used the Codex Alimentarius standards. Using these standards, they concluded that raw milk was a low-risk food, even a very low-risk food. So there is no reason for there to be any opposition from the health departments against raw milk. It is a low-risk food. Look, we have 15 deaths a year from oysters, but you can still buy raw oysters. Why? because politicians eat oysters. As soon as enough politicians have children and grandchildren who are thriving on raw milk, we'll have raw milk everywhere.
One long-standing argument against consuming raw milk is that there is no significant loss of nutritional value caused by pasteurization.
There's been no scientific study that shows that raw milk is more beneficial health and healthier than pasteurized milk. There's a lot of anecdotal information out there, and of course anecdotes can be good for hypotheses for scientific studies, but a lot of those anecdotal personal stories haven't been validated scientifically, and that's what we look at from, especially from a public health standpoint, is has something scientifically been validated to where we can say, yes, this is safe for the masses to consume.
But we're not asking those questions of, is there some other compounds in there that are also potentially health promoting? And there are actually a few studies that are just on raw milk consumption that have found that if you give an urbanized child raw milk, it reduces the risk of developing allergies and asthma and stuff like that. And granted, this is an area that of course needs more study. But if that's true, I mean, if you can reduce allergy risk, especially asthma development with raw milk, then you start to have a benefit to weigh against. And it's because, there's a lot of kids who who suffer from asthma, a lot of kids who actually go to the hospital, and some folks even die from asthma. I think it's also important to know that, a large percentage of the people who get in serious trouble with raw milk is also kids.
In our immune system, 80% of it is in our gut. Your body is down there thinking, good, okay, oh, bad, nope. So the immune system is down there sorting out all the stuff we shovel in. If that immune system is damaged, if your gut is damaged, you don't have enough probiotics in there, you're going to not be able to filter out the bad guy. And the pathogens can jump right into you. And raw milk, raw foods, farm fresh foods have a lot of probiotics in it that we reculture ourselves.
Unfortunately, large-scale scientific studies on the health benefits of raw milk continue to lag far behind those focused in defense of further processing and pasteurization.
I wonder if we can be even a little egotistical in thinking that research from other countries is not being valid in terms of making opinions. Because I'll read this all the time in research journals where they'll disagree with how the research was done in terms of some part of the methodology, but then they'll come out as saying, well, there's not any research on this thing, and there was research. It's just they disagreed with how it was done.
One of the things militating against what we're doing is the pharmaceutical industry, because big dairy uses a lot of antibiotics, a lot of chemicals, a lot of drugs, and our kind of farming doesn't use any of that. We don't want milk where the animals have given antibiotics or drugs. So I'm sure that's, within the FDA, I'm sure that's where a lot of the opposition is coming from.
The newspaper, the media, television, is frequently corporate driven. So the message you get, and by the way, almost all university research is corporate driven. It's what we call outcome-based research. If you tell me what you want to prove or disprove, I can design you an experiment that will achieve your desired results. So food freedom is huge, and it's again giving us responsibility to choose what we want to eat, what we want to put in our children.
And the thing is, you cannot make pasteurized milk 100% safe. In 2007, we had 3 deaths from pasteurized milk. We've had over the years something like 40 or 50 deaths from pasteurized milk. If you really want to make things safe, then you get rid of all dairy foods.
There's always things out there, and outbreaks are going to continue to occur. What I think you need to look at and be informed about when you're, potentially thinking about purchasing and drinking raw milk, and when specifically looking at it versus pasteurized, that yes, there are these outbreaks that are associated with pasteurized milk. Again, most of those are contaminated after the fact. There are outbreaks that occur with drinking raw milk. They occur in both. There are millions and millions of people every day that drink pasteurized milk, and far fewer people that consume either raw milk or products made from raw milk. So when you're looking at sheer numbers, it's not equal. the risk is far greater with drinking raw milk.
From most of the data that I've been able to look at from the Centers for Disease Control, your chances of getting some sort of disease bad enough to land you in the hospital is about 1 in 500,000.
But until some kind of standard is established in Wyoming, judging the safety and quality of raw milk is up to the consumer's best judgment.
If someone came to me and said, "What's your opinion on raw milk?" And I'd be like, well, me personally, like raw milk intermittently, like would probably be beneficial, but there's a lot of context within that question that is not talked about. If I'm going to drink raw milk, I'm going to go meet the farmer. I'm going to go see his operation. I'm going to see how hygienic it is. I'm going to see how hygienic his practices are. I'm going to see how ethical he is and how educated he is about his product. And then, once I'm an informed consumer, then I'll purchase some milk. Then I'll drink it. Then I'll feel safe giving it to family if they visit, you know. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of educational context to that question outside of just raw milk, yes or no.
It's all a complicated web of being educated and smart enough to know to find a farmer, like through the Weston A. Price Foundation or through eatwild.com. Eatwild.com, Joe Robinson's put together this unbelievable site. Let's say you live in Laramie, Wyoming. Well, where would I find pastured eggs in Laramie? Go to eatwild.com. Oh yeah, there's 3 guys that are women or people that are making eggs right in my backyard. I didn't even know they were out there. But the farmer has to be able to get registered at Eat Wild or get registered at Weston A. Price Foundation. And that I encourage everyone to do so we can find each other. There's plenty of sophisticated eaters that can't find good food.